You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. It's time to see what's making the headlines with the Daily Mirror columnist, Susie Boniface, and editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simons. Welcome to both of you. They'll be with us from now until just before midnight. So let's see what's on some of the front pages for you now. Well, the Mirror leads on the school bus crash on the M53. Poll shows Rishi a path to victory, reads the front of the Daily Mail, which says voters back Rwanda and net zero plans. The Telegraph claims Suella Braverman refuses to meet with the Archbishop of Canterbury over migration plans. The Times reports on the government's response to rising taxes with the headline, "We can't let tax rises go on forever," says Hunt. Tories declare war on drivers is over, reads the front of the Daily Express. The Sun carries a story on David and Victoria Beckham from a new Netflix documentary. The FT reports on more accusations against ex-BP chief Bernard Looney. And You Sick Deviants reads the front page of The Star as it reports that more Brits like pineapple on their pizza than not. It's a choice. It's just a choice. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simons. Welcome to both of you. We are going to start with the Mail, their front page, and this poll that they've carried out, which is an indication as to what will drive Rishi Sunak towards victory in the general election. Jake?
Well, I mean, the Daily Mail says it's a path to victory for the Tories. I'm not sure that it necessarily is a path to victory. That remains to be seen. But it certainly does give us a sense for the sort of manifesto pledges that we may see going into the next election in advance of the Tory conference, which starts over the weekend. And interestingly, the sort of main highlights of this are that 60% of the public support the Tories' Rwanda plan, that controversial plan for deporting asylum seekers to Rwanda, against only 19% who disapprove of it. On the green agenda, Rishi Sunak's been rolling back from some of those pledges about electric cars and that sort of thing recently. Half of voters support that, against just 36 who oppose it. So those are two big sort of vote-winning agendas, according to the Mail poll. As well as the other thing that stands out is that abolishing inheritance tax, 53% of people would be in support of that. So there were some murmurings that might make its way into the manifesto some weeks ago. But then there are other things that are more complicated as well. So, for example, the idea of tax cuts. 37% of people support tax cuts, but 38% of people want them maintained at the current level, which would suggest that might not necessarily make it into the Tory manifesto this time round. So a big spread of different statistics. On the whole, gives us a shape of what the Tory party may try to do in the next election. But the one that sticks out that's bad news for them is Rishi versus Keir, where in terms of best leader, Keir Starmer is ahead on 39 points, whereas Rishi is only on 31.
And that's something that hasn't changed for quite a while, has it? That lead in various other polls.
Well, when you actually look at, if you look at the front page of the Mail, it looks like, as it says in big letters, there is a path to victory. When you actually look at the detail of the poll, and they've spread it out inside, and it's in lots of little boxes, loads of detail, no one is going to drill through it unless you're lunatics like us. There isn't a path. There is no clear way that I can see that Rishi Sunak can make it work because, the biggest issue for 61% of people in that survey is the cost of living, which is considered to be pretty much a Rishi issue, a Rishi problem, which he doesn't really have any way of tackling it. 53% of people want to deal with the NHS. That's the second biggest issue. Nothing on this front page here is talking about the cost of living or NHS. There are no Tory policies to kind of get those fixed in a way that people seem to be gelling with. When they're talking, the idea that you have in here about cutting inheritance tax, that's not on there. When they've asked people what's the biggest issue for you, they're not saying, oh, it's inheritance tax. So if they really want to spend billions, which is what it would cost to scrap that tax, it's not going to work for the voters. Therefore, where is this path to victory? And
although there is a nod to cost of living, though, with the government's decision to delay the net zero targets, because the idea behind that was to help people struggling through
But it's not inflation, it's not growing the economy. And when you look into the actual detail of the study inside, when they say, who do you feel is going to be better off with the NHS and halving inflation and growing the economy, all of which are Rishi pledges, the answer in the poll is Keir, unfortunately. What you've got here, really, frankly, is a disconnect. So you have, with the Daily Mail, and in fact all newspapers, dealing with a narrower and narrower readership all the time they're having to appeal to. This is the kind of front page that got Liz Truss elected. These are the kind of policies that Liz Truss would very much like, and those are the kind of readers they're trying to appeal to. If Rishi Sunak wants to get elected, if he wants a path to victory, he's got to go for a broader and broader base. He's got to be far more centrist in order to appeal to more people to get those votes. These votes would help, but they aren't, they would actually knock out other votes if he was to go for some of the things that are suggested here on this page. So this just isn't a path to victory. It's a path to victory if you're a Daily Mail reader, perhaps, or you're Ted Verity, who's the editor. It's not a path to victory if you've got any kind of awareness of actual electoral maths and how you get there and get to the next stage.
Do you agree with that, Jake?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think it's a path to victory. As I said, right in the top is putting a very positive gloss on this. I think it's a prism through which we can see the shape of a Tory manifesto. The path to victory really is trying to square the difficulty between the red wall seats, the red wall voters and what they want, the seats that Boris won in 2019, and the kind of Tory shires, the Lib Dem, the yellow-blue swing seats, and the different agendas that are important to those people there. And it's that split electorate that that Rishi Sunak has to appeal to in the next manifesto.
But that ignores the fact that a lot of people, regardless of how they feel Rishi would or wouldn't do one particular issue, it's the fact that there's been 13, 14 years and generally most people want to change. There's almost nothing he could do to make a path to victory because people just go, oh, do you know what? Everything that's gone wrong is on your watch. And so therefore...
Voting for change isn't easy.
I know, but it's what a lot of people do actually quite like. A bit of hopey, changey Barack Obama stuff.
Is that coming from Keir Starmer?
Well,
Sure.
Yes, we can. Let's move on to the Times and talking about things that might sway people's vote. Taxes definitely will fall into that category. We've got the Chancellor quoted here as saying that, the most explicit comments to date, the Chancellor has signalled that Tories would make a big offer on tax before the election.
Yes, I mean, this very clearly is not saying that tax cuts are coming. What it's saying
it's not saying anything.
Is that no more. Well, it's saying that no more tax rises are coming. Ideally, that's what it's saying. Which is a virtuous and valid point, which I agree with. I think most people would agree with that. But given that the Mail has established through its sample of 1,000 respondents that 37% of people would support tax cuts against 38% who want them to be maintained, it's not a wedge issue. It's not something you're going to win the election on in the way in which the Tory right would think or would like. But within the detail here of the interview with Jeremy Hunt, he's got these two priorities he's pushing. One is reforming the benefit system to try to get people back to work, which is important. Got more than 5 million people out of work with a record of job vacancies. Currently 1.7 million people on sickness benefit. And the other is reforming the public services by using AI to free up people on the front line to improve the productivity without having to grow the size of the state.
So to get rid of
jobs. These are the two big ideas. Well, not shrinking the state, but just these are the two big ideas that he's presenting.
Freeing up people on the front line is using robots to do their jobs.
We need a more productive state, not a bigger state, he said.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, but that's just... This is part of the problem. He's talking about how, we can't let tax rises go on forever, but then he hasn't really got a way of saying that he can possibly make any tax cuts, because we all know what happened when Kwasi Kwarteng suggested that. And the real actual story is actually halfway down at the bottom of the story. It says Hunt is under mounting pressure from the right of his party to unveil a pathway to tax cuts. That is the entire reason for the story, for the interview. He's under this pressure. He's having to find a way to say, honestly, it's going to happen at some point. I'm not showing you my workings, but I promise. And there's a quote, and it's absolutely fantastic. There's a quote here that says, the big question everyone wants an answer to is, are we condemned to taxes going on rising forever? The party has an answer to that. A credible answer is going to win trust at the next election. But he doesn't actually give you the answer.
Well, yeah.
Not in this bit, anyway. Maybe he does later on.
I think there are two things to bear in mind here, though. I mean, the first is that COVID plays a big part in this story and in the cost of living crisis that you talked about earlier. One of the reasons why the tax burden is so high is because our level of debt is so huge. And one of the main reasons for that, and not the only reason, a big reason, is what happened during COVID when our debt spiralled. The other thing I think it's useful to bear in mind is that although, it's not definitely a slam dunk that tax cuts would bring a lot of votes in, it might bring in the votes that count. It might energise the Tory base, it might swing certain seats in certain parts of the country, so it could be something that would be really valuable in terms of a path to victory we were talking about earlier.
Let's have a look at the Telegraph front page, and the Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, is seemingly refusing to meet or avoiding meeting the Archbishop of Canterbury over her policies, including the migrants to Rwanda policy, which he, in the past, has said it was against the judgment of God. She's avoiding him.
Yeah, he's not very happy with the policy, but she is the Home Secretary. Archbishops do meet politicians and ministers to discuss things. The Archbishop has met previous Home Secretaries. He's also in the House of Lords. He has a right to speak about legislation. That's our constitution. And she has, frankly, no right to refuse to see him on all those bases because that's part of her job as Home Secretary, is to discuss with the Lord Spiritual, which the bishops are in the House of Lords, to discuss legislation. And if she's got so strong about her policy, she should surely go out and defend it. She does have to go and meet people. She has to meet critics. She has to talk to other politicians who don't agree with her. That is the point of politics. If you refuse to talk to someone, that's not going to change the message at all. And I would just say, what would Jesus do? I think he would probably sit down and have a chat, wouldn't he? And she does. If you're running away from the Godbrotherers, then I think you're probably in a bit of trouble.
Well, he's accused her of harmful rhetoric, hasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think the Archbishop has a right to see her. I don't think she's obligated to see him. I agree with the point on dialogue and speaking to people who disagree with you, but that doesn't necessarily mean you've got to meet the Archbishop whenever he wants to meet you. What I would say is that it's useful to look at this again through the prism of that Daily Mail poll. That, remember, 60% of voters, according to the Mail poll, support the Rwanda plan. If that's the case, headlines like this, Braverman is digging in, she's not giving way to Welby, she's refusing even to meet him. You've seen a lot of very eye-catching rhetoric from her recently on refugees, on migration, on small boats. And that's really putting the topic front and centre in the public's mind at the moment, on the top of the news agenda. And she's getting the point across. So headlines like this, even though they seem negative, actually are pushing forward to people. This is her policy. It's popular with people. She's going to be pushing it through.
So do you think the public will agree that she shouldn't meet with the Archbishop then?
I don't know. I mean, all I know is that if the Mail is to be believed, then 60% of people support the Rwanda policy. If their sympathies are in that direction, then I'd imagine they'd probably look kind of...
Well, there are other polls that have different figures for people who don't support the Rwanda policy and think it's never going to be enacted anyway. There's a Supreme Court case waiting in which they decide whether or not it's going to be lawful. And some of this, frankly, is just trying to sort of rally support ahead of that court case. They are expecting, I think, in the government for that case to fail, that it will be an unlawful plan. And when that happens, they want to be able to blame someone for it other than themselves or their own poor policy making. And, of course, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who seems to be a bit west and a bit liberal, is obviously there to be a whipping boy as far as they're concerned, and is going to be one of the many people, probably with the unelected judges as well, that they'll start saying it's their fault and that's why we have this problem. And again, that appeals to their base. But in Braverman's case, she's doing the opposite of what Sunak has to do. Sunak has to broaden his appeal to people, but Braverman is narrowing and narrowing and narrowing her appeal. She seems to think that in a year's time, there's going to be a whole new leadership election in the Tory party. They all have gone into opposition. Rishi Sunak will have gone. And to win that future leadership election, she needs to position herself as the hard right, blue-blooded, red meat option for the Tory sort of faithful who'll be having the vote next time. And I think that's where she's positioning herself. We don't listen to no archbishops around here. I do what I want kind of thing.
She's getting ready for manoeuvres. Susie and Jake, for the moment, thank you. We are going to take a break. Coming up, more, including this, the Telegraph reporting on the possibility of a national parking app. We'll have more on that and other stories. Do stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching the press preview, still with me, Daily Mirror columnist Susie Boniface and the editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Wallis Simons. Let's have a look at the front page of the Daily Express and the headline in bold, Tories declare war on drivers is over. What is happening, Susie?
I don't know. I looked at the paper and thought the Tories had declared a war on drivers. And then when I read it done, it is over. Oh, but it's still a Tory war on drivers? I don't understand. It's kind of badly written headline in a way. But what's going to happen is when Rishi Sunak gives some of his speeches at party conference this week, they're going to be unveiling measures that was going to stop these 20-mile-an-hour zones getting rolled out and stop all the clampdowns and stop all the clean air, blah, blah, and all this kind of stuff. And what they don't seem to realise, while they're busy trying to reverse the national sort of old jalopy back into 1984, back when we still had 4-star petrol and none of this newfangled unleaded stuff, is that you don't need to have a war on drivers if you don't need to call it that. If you just help people be cleaner and greener with their vehicles. Most people would like to have help to purchase a vehicle, a reasonable amount of help to purchase vehicles that are better, to gently transition to that point, to have infrastructure that would help you be able to drive around and not pollute. Most people want cleaner air. It's the fact that they keep marketing it as a war is an attack on you and your personal freedoms to go and kill people and each other and drive around at speed outside primary schools, that somehow you go, well, what, you know, it's madness. The whole thing's madness. They've got nothing else to say. That's what the
Transport Secretary Mark Harper is saying that he'd halt the anti-car campaign of a metropolitan elite.
That's right. That jumped out at me as well. Although I should say that's not a direct quote. That's in the voice of the journalist.
Metropolitan elite who have to take the bus.
But that does have a bit of a populist tinge. That line. That's true. I mean, look, I think it feels to me as if the inspiration for this can be traced back to July, to the Uxbridge by-election, which was seen as a referendum on ULEZ and green policies in general, where the voters there backed a Tory candidate because they basically felt that the war on drivers was going too far. And you're right, yes, we would all like to have, handouts for our nice green cars and everything to be cheap and affordable and wonderful.
Well, it's not a handout, that actually drives
but
an industry.
ULEZ is not that. ULEZ was and is a punitive tax on people who have no choice but to use their cars to get to work. And so I think that it will be, this wasn't one of the things that the Mail polled, but I think that it will be popular with people, that people feel that motorists, obeying the law, using your car responsibly, filling it up with petrol at quite an extortionate sum, particularly in the countryside where the infrastructure doesn't exist to get you to work in any other way. So you've got to use your car to get to work. To then be hammered with taxes on top of that feels a bit of a slap in the face. So I think it's going to be popular.
Staying with the car theme, let's have a look at the Telegraph very quickly. And I don't know whether this you think might be popular, but this is a national parking app enabling drivers to pay charges anywhere in the country. This is to be unveiled by ministers. So one app, I think, according to the article, and you can use it anywhere in the country. Wasn't there a COVID app at some point? There was a Matt Hancock app. There were a whole bunch of national apps. If it's anything like any other national app project, it's going to be painful. It's bad enough as it is trying to use all these apps. I don't trust them at all. I don't think it would work Thumbs down from you.
How does it work? All the car parks are owned by private companies, lots of them, or local authorities. If you have one app, you pay all your money to there. Everyone's got to try and apply for their cash to come back. It's not going to work. It's stupid.
We must leave it there. We didn't get to the fact that you're possibly a sick deviant for liking pineapple.
I'm a very sick deviant. I'm a very sick deviant, and I'm proud to say it. Pineapple every day.
No pineapple.
Yeah, let's take a look at the weather for you now.